what I want you guys to do. I told you guys to title this, what is your experience, encounter, and relationship with Jesus? I want you guys to take that word, your, I want you to put a big fat X right through it, and I want you to change it to my. We're going to change the title of this morning's message to what is my experience. This is going to be very personal. Like I said, today's word is for you. It's not for your neighbor. It's not for your family member, your friend. It is for you. What is my experience, encounter, and relationship with Jesus? It is encouraging to hear others' experiences on what God has done in their lives. The testimonies of others help build our faith. They encourage and inspire us. The encounters of others help us believe God for the impossible. We have an example as we watch others in their relationship with God. When we hear about others' experiences, encounters, and relationship with Jesus, they help build our faith. But those things become life-changing when they inspire and create a hunger for us to have our own experience, encounter, and relationship with Jesus. When I first got saved, I was at this church in Victorville, and they had a guest speaker there, and he was sharing his testimony. That was the word that he was giving. He was just sharing his testimony. He'd been involved in gangs, in and out of prison, drug addict, all these things. And so he was sharing his experience, his testimony of what God had done in his life. So for me to sit there in that pew and listen to what he was saying, it totally had my attention. I mean, my ears were open, my heart was open, because not that I could relate to him. I didn't come from the lifestyle that he was a gang member and all these things. I didn't come from that type of lifestyle, but I was just able to see that God had changed his life. And I remember just being open, like, man, this is amazing that God had done this for this man. His testimony created this hunger inside of me to have my own testimony. Hearing what God had done in his life made me sit back and say, you know, what can God do in my life? Amen. When I first started hanging out with Pastor Tommy, the church had just started. We just started hanging out with him and stuff. He used to have a prayer closet, or he still has the prayer closet. And in this prayer closet, it's a real, just a normal closet, I think maybe 2.5 feet by 8 feet, 9 feet. It was barely enough room for Pastor Tommy just to kind of squat down on his knees. He had a boom box and just kind of lean over. That's all. There was no room to stretch, no room to, not even really room to stand. I could stand in there only 4 feet, but yeah, Richard would have a problem with that. But this closet was really small, and he used to sit in this closet, and he would spend hours and hours every morning in prayer. If you go in this closet, like I said, he had a boom box so he could play worship music. All over the walls inside of this closet were scriptures written. The whole thing was just covered in scriptures. He had books and tapes on the top of the bookshelf, and this is just the time that he spent with God. And I just remember hearing his stories about what God had spoke to him in his closet. He would talk about when he was in his closet and the presence of God would just fill him, and the visions that he had and the words that he got. He would always tell us about all these things. And it gave me such this hunger for prayer, this desire to experience what he had experienced, that I went and made my own prayer closet. His testimony encouraged me to go out and pursue my own encounter, have my own experience, my own relationship. I have friends now that I hang out with, and it's exciting to see them again. I got to see some friends last night that I haven't seen in a while, just to kind of talk with them, what's God doing in your life, and just some of the things that they're experiencing. That encourages me, because then I say, you know what, God is moving. He's moving in people's lives. And that builds my faith to say, you know what, God, I know that you can do the same for me. Again, when we hear about others' experiences, encounters, and relationship with Jesus, they help build our faith. But those things become life-changing when they inspire and create a hunger for us to have our own experiences, encounters, and relationship with Jesus. Galatians, let's turn to Galatians chapter 1, verse 11 through 12. Okay, now this is Paul. He's talking to the church in Galatia. It says, "But I certify you, brethren, that the gospel which was preached of me is not after men." Next verse. It says, "For I neither received it of man, neither was I taught it, but by the revelation of Jesus Christ." What Paul was saying to the church in Galatia, he was saying, look, what I'm teaching you, what I'm bringing you, what I'm trying to get across to you guys is not something that somebody had taught me. It's not something that I went to school for. It's not something that, somebody says, this is what you have to believe. It was nobody other no other testimony but his own. He says, what I'm teaching you, what I'm showing you is the revelation of Jesus that I myself have experienced. That's the type of relationship we want to have, and that's the type of hunger that we want to have. You know, and I don't say this in a rebellious way. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. When I was younger and I first got saved, I was the type of person, and there is, I do get this way still now, is that I don't believe everything that somebody tells me. Amen. Just because somebody tells me.
Amen.
If somebody says something, and I don't say, well, that's not true. I'm not a doubter, and I'm not somebody who doesn't believe. I'm just the type of person, because I want to have my own encounter, my own experience, my own revelation of the situation. So when somebody says something to me, I take it and say, all right, God, show me. How can I apply this to my life? That's what Paul did. He says, look, I'm not trying to give you anything that somebody taught me. I'm trying to give you what God himself has shown me. And sometimes, most of the time, that is the most impactful way that we can live our lives when we want to affect those around us, is by allowing them to see what God has done for us, not really what God has done for others. Does that make sense? It's our experience and our encounter, our relationship with Jesus that matters, not what everybody else is doing. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but that's what Jesus was saying to the disciples. He's saying, what is everybody saying about me? Well, they're saying you're a prophet. They're saying you're a teacher. They're saying this. They're saying that. Okay, but what do you say? And that's the question I want to ask you guys. Who is Jesus to you? Who is Jesus to you? Not to your neighbor, not to your spouse, not to your mom, your dad, your children, not to your pastor. Who is Jesus to you? That's the real question. Because when that day comes, and we stand before God, he's not going to say, what did your pastor say about me? He's not going to say, what did your husband or your wife say about me?
Right.
He's not going to say that. So we have to have this desire to have our own encounter, our own experience, our own relationship with God. Let's go ahead and let's turn to John chapter 3, verse 1. Chapter 3, verse 1 says, there was a man of the Pharisees, somebody say Pharisees, named Nicodemus, a ruler of the Jews. Now the Pharisees, we all know about the Pharisees, right? They were like a religious group that was more concerned with keeping up the laws and the rules of the religion rather than knowing the God of that religion. They were more concerned with just, you got to do this, this, and that, rather than the one who gave them the instruction. So there was a man of the Pharisees named Nicodemus, a ruler of the Jews. This man came to Jesus by night and said to him, Rabbi, we know that you're a teacher. Again, he's saying, Jesus, this is what we are saying about you. I'm a Pharisee, I'm well schooled and educated in the law, so we know that you are a teacher at least. He says, we know that you are a teacher come from God, for no one can do these signs that you do unless God is with him. So Nicodemus, he's a Pharisee, he's schooled, he's trained in the law, he knows all these things. So he is coming to Jesus because there has to be some type of hunger inside of him that is causing him to kind of shut out what he has been taught and to find his own revelation for himself. He went to Jesus and said, you know what, I want to know. I want to know if what I've been taught is true. Let's go ahead and jump to John chapter 7. The officers came to the chief priests and Pharisees who said to them, why have you not brought him? Because they're talking about, they're trying to capture Jesus. They're trying to set him up so that they can bring him in and arrest him. Why have you not brought him? The officers answered, no man ever spoke like this man. Then the Pharisees answered them, you are also deceived. Have any of the rulers or the Pharisees believed in him? For this crowd that does not know the law is accursed. Verse 50 says, who? Nicodemus, who came to Jesus by night, being one of them. He was one of the Pharisees. And this is what Nicodemus says, does our law judge a man before it hears him and knows what he is doing? So Nicodemus went from this Pharisee, he is a student of the law, he's well schooled, well educated in the law. He decided to put his education, what somebody else had taught him, what somebody else had shown him, he decided to put that away for a second and ask Jesus, Jesus, I know that you're a teacher, there's something about you. And then later on in the book of John, he's with all of the Pharisees, and then they're accusing Jesus, and Nicodemus actually stands up for Jesus. He actually stands up and says, wait a minute, we can't really judge him until we actually speak to him. So now he went from his life being this educated person on the law and the rules and knowing all these things to get to God and to know God, to say, you know what, let me just put this stuff to the side. Let me actually meet Jesus myself. And from that point, he went into chapter 7 where he's actually defending Jesus. Let's go to chapter 19. Chapter 19, verse 39. We all there? 39 says, and
there.
Give me a name. Nicodemus, who at first came to Jesus by night, also came, bringing a mixture of myrrh. This is after Jesus had already been crucified. They had taken the body down from the cross. It says, and Nicodemus, who at first came to Jesus by night, also came, bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100 pounds. Nicodemus actually came after Jesus was crucified to help prepare the body of Jesus for his burial. Nicodemus went from this position of not believing in Jesus, believing more in what he had been taught, believing what others had encountered, what they had experienced, others' relationship with him. That was his revelation. He took that, put it aside, decided to meet Jesus for himself, to this point where he actually stood up for Jesus. And now at the end of John, you find Nicodemus helping prepare the body of Jesus. What happened? He became a believer. Nicodemus decided to forget what he had been taught, forget what people were saying about Jesus, and to have his own encounter, his own experience, his own relationship. We have to be at that point in our lives. If you want to grow and mature in the Lord, it's not about what others say to you, but it's about what you do with what they say. Amen. Are you applying it to a point where it pushes you to grow and mature in the Lord? Because we can all leave here the same way that we came. Or we can leave here taking the word that is brought forth, apply it to our life, and allow it to cause us to grow in Christ. To have your own experience and encounter and relationship with Jesus, these are the things that you need to apply to your life on a daily basis, if possible. First thing is prayer. You have to be a person of prayer. If you want to have an encounter, if you want to have an experience, if you want to have a relationship, there has to be prayer. Prayer is simply this. Basic definition, it's just communicating with God. That's all that it is. Amen. There is no other way that you can build a relationship with somebody other than communication. It just can't happen. The same thing with God. We can't have a relationship with Him if we don't have some type of prayer life. So I just want to encourage you guys, make time for prayer. Okay? Second thing is the Word, the Bible. How do you have your own experience, encounter, relationship with Jesus? The Word. Sometimes we want this audible sound, lightning, lights flashing, and fall out under the power of God. But we don't realize that this right here is more powerful. This right here, this is the truth. You can't go against this right here. This is it. So if you want God to speak to you, just open this up. Just open it up. This is His Word. This is His Word. So get into this. Third thing is church and fellowship. Church and fellowship. You have to have time with other believers. Okay? Now, I believe in church. I believe in church like this Sunday morning. I believe in that, but I also believe in, hey, you guys want to come over and hang out at my house? We're just going to hang out and eat. We're just going to, have a worship night. Or we're just going to hang out. I believe in that type of church also. I believe that you can have church any time of the day, any location. When you get a group of believers that come together and hang out and just talk about what God is doing, or just pray with each other, just hang out, that's church. The fourth thing, sharing and praying for others. Sharing and praying for others. The last thing I'm going to share with you guys to help you have your own experience, encounter, relationship. This is probably my favorite out of them all. Believe. It's kind of a long one, so make some space on your notes there. Or get your fingers ready for taking notes on your phone. Believe that you can have an experience, encounter, and build a relationship with Jesus anywhere and anytime. Believe that you can have an experience, encounter, and build a relationship with Jesus anywhere and anytime. I told you guys when I was younger and I first got saved, I spent 5-6 days a week in the church. I got to have keys, my own keys, so even when there wasn't service, I would like to go there and just pray. at that time, because I was young in the Lord, my understanding was I needed to be there to have my own encounter. I needed to be in the church building to have my own experience. If I wanted God to speak to me, if I needed to feel the presence of God, I needed to come into a building to have Him touch me, speak to me, whatever the case may be. But as I matured in God, I started to realize that it didn't matter where I was at, I can have an encounter. You can have an encounter with God anywhere, anytime. And the moment that you change that in your mind, the moment that you set that in your heart, that everywhere that I go, no matter what time of the day it is, no matter where I go, I can have an encounter with God. When you set that in your heart, you will always have that opportunity.
Yes.
Always have that opportunity. Let me prove it to you. Let's go to Matthew chapter 4, and I'm going to close with this. This is Jesus walking by the sea. Now, Jesus had just spent 40 days up in the wilderness. He came down from the mountain. He's about to begin his ministry. He's going to start calling out the disciples. Matthew 4:18 says, Jesus, walking by the Sea of Galilee, saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishers. Now, fishermen in this day, they were fishermen. You were a carpenter. You were whatever your family was, your father was, your grandfather was. This is what you were. Okay, you did this as a child. You became an adult. This was your trade. So these guys were fishermen. I mean, they did this every single day. I mean, they woke up in the morning, had their chorizo and eggs. They went on the boat. They loaded the tackle box. They loaded all the fish bait. Got their nets ready. They did this every single day of their life. It was routine. It was every single day. Next verse says, and he said unto them, talking about Jesus, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. These guys had no idea when they woke up that morning that they were about to have an encounter with Jesus. All they were doing was living their life. This is what I mean. Anywhere, anytime, you can have an encounter. You just have to believe that it can happen. These guys were just doing their normal thing. They had an encounter with Jesus that forever changed their life. And later on, when you begin to read about Peter, he became the founder of the church. That's, going back to the scripture in Matthew. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked the disciples, saying, who do men say that I am? Some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, or Jeremiah, one of the prophets. But who do you say that I am? And Peter answered. What did Peter say? You guys can say it out loud if you know. What did Peter tell Jesus?
You are the Christ,
You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. He says, look, Jesus, I'm not going to give you what everybody else is saying about you. I'm going to tell you what you are to me. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus said, you know what? That's it. You've had an encounter. You've had an experience. You have this relationship. You know who I am. Who is Jesus to you guys this morning?